Hey, family, welcome to another episode of the Black Man's Roundtable.
Hello, I'm Kevin Evans, co-moderator.
And I am your host, Rodney Butler. And today we have on a candidate who is going to be running for the county coroner. Her name is Melissa Polk. Melissa, we are very glad to have you here. And before we get started with the questioning, we don't have that many questions tonight. We have about 10 questions because there's only so much you can ask the coroner, but we tried to dig as deep as we could to find some good questions to ask the coroner. So with that, Melissa, tell the audience a little bit about yourself.
Absolutely. First and foremost, I want to say thank you for this prestigious invitation. I'm very excited and honored and humbled to be invited. So thank you so much. I'm very excited to kind of give a little introduction of myself to your audience. But to do that, my name is Melissa Polk. I am a graduate of Gupton Jones College. I have an associate science degree in mortuary science. I have passed the state boards, both arts and science, for mortuary science. I currently teach at Alexander High School, the healthcare science pathway, but I also proudly hold under my belt 25 plus years of healthcare experience. I am married. I've been married for 24 years. I'm married to Fred Polk. I have two, thank you, Lord, graduating seniors this year, one that attends, both of them in Douglas County high schools. So super excited about that. And that's pretty much me in the nutshell. I'm excited about being the next Douglas County coroner. So looking to have a lot of support, and I'm just very excited.
Well, great. Let me send you two shouts out real quick on, well, three, I guess. All of your graduating seniors, because you said both are graduating, right, this year?
That's correct.
Right. One from DC and one from Alexander. So congratulations on that. Congratulations on 24 years of marriage. That's kind of unheard of. Yeah. And and also Teachers Appreciation Week. So we want to thank you for that and for all that teachers do. Okay, great. That being said, let's get to the first question, and I have the first question, and it's a pretty easy one. What inspired you to run for Douglas County Coroner, and what qualifications and experience do you bring to this position?
Absolutely. So I have wanted to be coroner in some aspects all the way back when I first started going to college at Gupton Jones. My ambitions were to be a coroner of a county, and I just happened to be living in Douglas County for over 20-something years. And so naturally it was for me to have a desire to be the county coroner. I did have ambitions of also running previously in other elections. However, having two children, it seemed as though that I felt it unfair to run, knowing that my obligation and my commitment was to my two children, getting them ready for college life, right? So I kind of reserved myself for running. But this is the perfect timing. Everything is lining up. I have two graduating seniors. So I am just following through with my passion and my ambition from years ago, securing that in education. So what are some qualifications that I bring? Again, of course, the mortuary science education, and in that you get forensic study science education and training with that, of course, which is very important in being a coroner. Also, from my years of healthcare experience, I was down on a high level of administration, not just bedside care. And that would be helping with families, speaking with them, learning how to help them through bereavement, having empathy. Those things are very important in the coroner's office. But also high-end level of administration, working one-on-one with physicians, working one-on-one with the state for accreditations, working one-on-one with a lot of confidential high-end information. And I think that those skills, that practice, being able to communicate on all levels of individuals will flow over into the coroner's office to make it a successful approach and platform for our county.
Okay, great. Kevin, before you ask your question, I do want you to know that Melissa, one of her graduating seniors, is going to the Marine Corps.
Yes.
So
right,
just glad he stayed away from the Navy, but he almost messed around. Go ahead, Kevin. You got the second.
Let me correct you real quick. The Marine Corps is part of the Navy.
I know. That's why I said it. That's why I said he almost messed around with the Navy. But no, Kevin is a Navy veteran as well, Melissa, and served with honor, and we retired Navy, and we joke a lot. So with that,
is he going to Paris Island? Is he going to Paris Island?
Okay. He is, yes, yeah. Yep.
That's the
Very
only place to
excited.
go. That's the only place to go. Some people
Right.
mess up and go to San Diego. That's Hollywood. You don't learn anything
Right.
out there. You don't learn anything out there. Um,
Right.
well, Rodney, the question that I have, Melissa's asked it, answered it twice already. But
Yeah.
I'll go ahead and ask it again. Maybe she can embellish
Yeah,
a little
just she
more.
might want to
I'm sorry.
she might want to expound a little
Explain.
bit. I warned her that
Okay.
some of these are going to flow over into the other ones. So
Yeah. Okay. Can you outline your relevant educational background, any specialized training you have undergone in forensic science, pathology, or related fields? So you can expound
Absolutely.
on what you already answered.
Sure, of course. So, as I stated before, in your education at Gupton Jones, and while it's a mortuary science degree, you still get a lot of education on forensic science, meaning that being able to read the body and it speak to you and give you clues of manner of death, time of death, things like that. So, that training, of course, will very much fall over into the coroner's office, which is a very important part of that job because, as we all know, it also coroner's office requires a form of investigation, right? Being able to understand the manner of death, the disposition of death, all of that stuff. So that portion of that education will assist in that, of course. But as I stated before too, is that some of the training that I had in healthcare, being able to communicate with families, that is also a training process. That is a skill that you learn in communication because communication is highly important. Being able to call the next of kin as the coroner, being able to have conversations with law enforcement, with funeral directors, all of those things. You need to learn how to have those communications and learning how to have them with empathy as well as professionalism and education in that conversation. So I think all of that combined will bring that to the table and make it a well-rounded approach for me to be the next coroner of Douglas County.
I got to tell you, I admire you for that because you meet people at the worst time in their life, and
Yes,
you got to have empathy,
that's right.
sympathy, maybe a little anger to get them out of the way so you can do what you got to do. So I admire everything you just said and what you do.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
yep, and you'll actually get to expound on that dealing with the family and stuff a little bit later on in the question. So
Excellent. I would
you get
love
to
to.
expound on it. Yep, exactly. Next question: as the Douglas County Coroner, you'll be responsible for determining the cause and manner of death in various situations. How do you plan to ensure accuracy, thoroughness in your investigations?
Absolutely. Of course, bringing the knowledge of understanding forensics, understanding that the body, and I can't say it enough to you to know that the body does speak to you loudly, and being able to identify those signs, being able to identify that language that it's speaking to you, and certainly making sure that you have all the facts, right? That you know everything about the situation. In the event that law enforcement is there and they feel that it's a criminal account, you want to make sure that you have all of that information as well, doing your interviews, speaking to all those persons who found the body, who was the first to see the body, all of those things, all that information combined is what you need to make a great assessment. And in the event you feel that there's foul play, certainly having the communication and the contact to contact our local GBI to start that autopsy process, because we certainly want to make certain that we're accurate, that we're precise when you fill out that death certificate. And that is very important to the families. It's also very important for us to have for our county reporting and for Douglas County as a whole. So we need to make sure we're capturing that information accurately, not only to help our families in death certificates, but also as a county-wide reporting system. So I think that being attentive, knowing who's in play, knowing who's on the site, knowing the circumstances, and being able to read and see and hear the body is what will make me be able to make that assessment accurately.
Great. So Melissa, I know you and I have had this conversation just a little bit in a prior talk with each other, and I want you to expound on it because this is very important to the listeners and the viewers of the Black Man's Roundtable. Because like you and I talked about, like I talked to you about before, is that there's a lot of unprofessionalism sometimes, and there's a lot of I would just leave it at that. There's a lot of unprofessionalism on the part of our medical professionals that come on the scene, and sometimes our law enforcement officers that come on the scene. You and I talked about, I still can't remember the young man name off the top of my head, but the young man in Colorado, I believe, where he was given this injection of medicine, and the county coroner called his death the cause of death being excited delirium. You and I talked about that a little bit, and there's a lot of times where young black men, older black men, are labeled with, or the county coroners are saying that they died by excited delirium. When you look it up and you research it, you find out that most of the time the cause of death for excited delirium is inside of a hospital where you are very terminal and there's a lot of medicine and stuff like that going on. So that being said, reassure our audience of the Black Man's Roundtable that not only will you look at mishandling, unprofessionalism or mishandling or criminal stuff from somebody that is, if it's labeled a homicide, but also looking at mismanagement and unprofessionalism from our professionals like our medical EMT and our law enforcement.
Absolutely. That's a great question. And I think all of that ties, and I'll explain my answer. I think all of that ties in your professionalism and your expertise, right? And I think that in regard to the gentleman that you were speaking about specifically, I think that from my approach for that, if I was the one handling that, especially since we're talking about medication and injections, that's where that medical knowledge comes in, and that medical play is because I would want to see that chart. I would want to see what happened the day before, and what happened the day of or the day before. Was it a normal occurrence? Was it something introduced that was new to the individual and the patient? Were we introducing a new medication? Were we treating a new issue? Were we treating a new symptom? All of those things must go into play to make sure that everything was consistent and nothing new happened. Because if something new happened, then that could very well cause an effect, right? A cause and effect. And I think that that's very important to know, that there is always, just not inside the small box that you can actually see, there is information all the way around the outside of the box. And we have to be able to think outside the box. And I think that's very important for the approach of anything that you do. In regard to understanding the sensitivity of individuals that may be of color or ethnicity or culture, I think that being aware of those issues that happen culturally is very important for you as well to make an accurate assessment. And I don't think that you can really make an accurate assessment unless you are knowledgeable of the cultural differences, because that comes into play as well as understanding situations, understanding approach, and all of those things combined. So I think that by me being aware, and I have my marriage of 24 years, I'm married to Fred Polk, and he is an African-American male, and I have seen injustice for him. I have experienced it in my home. While I cannot empathize with him but I can sympathize, and I've wiped tears from him. I've sat and dealt with things that he's had to deal with, the overlooking, the injustice, and all of those things combined, and I took lessons from that. I just didn't weep with him. I learned from it, and I learned from it to be a better person, to be a better advocate for it, and to not only just for my husband, but also for my children, because my children are multiracial. So I think that all of that combined, knowing all of that, being aware of all of that, and have courage and understanding the importance of standing on that platform makes me a different than every other candidate, and makes me a more powerful approach to be the coroner of Douglas County.
Okay, thank you for that answer. And before we move to Kevin, I just want to close. Well, unless Kevin got something, I want to close my piece out by saying, okay, Kevin, I'm going to. I just want you to know that. So I'm glad that you said that you just didn't cry with him. In other words, you're an ally. Okay, crying and all that stuff, that's great, but we got to get up and do something about it. And you're saying that that's what you did. You cried with your husband, but you got up and did something about it. You wiped his tears, but you did something about it. But also, I just want for this audience to understand, because one of the most confusing races that happens, with this election cycle is the county coroner. People don't generally know what they do other than they show up on the scene when somebody's dead, right? But I want for our audience to understand that when we get down and talk about sympathy and empathy, that this is a very important role as far as it's county-wide. And so and the county coroner has a direct effect on marginalized communities. And if they are not sympathetic and empathetic, they can go down that rabbit hole just like so many other people and treat our marginalized people. They might be deceased, but they were marginalized before they died, you know. And so I just want for the Black Man's Roundtable audience to really, really understand that. And you did a good job in your answer. Okay, Kevin, go ahead.
Okay, I was just going to add that in Melissa's case and the coroner's case, what happened to that young man in Colorado, you come after the fact. That young man was shot up with ketamine, and he was
Ketamine, yeah.
on the autism spectrum. So
Yep.
that would put you, when you look at that case, you're going to be in in an awkward position, because now you got to challenge those folks that were there to say that they did something nefarious to a child, and that leads into my question. What measures will you take to maintain the integrity of the coroner's office and uphold your ethical standards in dealing with sensitive cases? Now, I know that you got two beautiful children about to graduate, but it puts me in mind of what was on the news yesterday, where they found the father and his three kids in the park, shot, and the coroner had to go down there. So I just want to throw that piece in to my question.
I just want to make sure I'm clear about your question. Can you clarify the question? Because
Okay,
I heard.
okay. What measures will you take to maintain the integrity of the coroner's office, okay, and uphold the ethical standards dealing with sensitive cases?
Absolutely. Absolutely. So I think that when you're talking about upholding integrity, that means that you're truthful, right? That means no matter what that truth is, that it's the truth and that's documented as truthful. And that's one thing that you learn in the medical profession as well, is that everything you document has to be factual. There's a thing called
Right.
subjective and objective information. And you need to make certain that you are being objective. It's tangible, measurable information, not just what you hear or not just what you're told, but it's objective information that you can actually physically measure it and see it and know that it is facts. And I think that's where integrity comes in. Integrity is factual information. Integrity is the truth, whether it is seen or heard around everyone or when it's in the room by yourself. And I think that I always will hold integrity. I am always going to tell the truth, whether it's truth that my own ears want to hear or anyone else's ears. And that is the expectation of me as a person with everything that I deal with on a personal level, and it will be and has been on a professional level. I am a very honest person. I'm a very factual person. I work in a form of excellence, meaning that everything I do, I try to make sure that whether it's an encounter, whether it's a documentation, whether it's a prayer with the family, whether it's anything I'm involved in, that I give it in a form of excellence. And that is treating others with respect, treating others with an integrity, and making certain that I do not see any cultural difference. I do not see color difference. Even when it comes down to religion, I do not see the difference. While I may be a Christian and I believe in my Savior Jesus Christ, I also have the ability to understand that not everyone does that. And I will not treat you any differently simply because we have different religious beliefs, different cultural beliefs, or different colors of skin. That will not happen in my presence, nor will I allow it to happen in any person that represents the office that I run.
Thank you, ma'am.
Okay. All right, Melissa, great great answer with that. And I'm glad you said that you do not see a difference in color. You do not see color difference versus you do not see color. When somebody tell me they don't see color, I'm like, what are you, colorblind? I mean, you got to see
Right.
color. But so I'm glad you said it that way. All right.
That's
That
correct.
said, how do you plan to collaborate with law enforcement agencies, healthcare professionals, and other stakeholders to improve the effectiveness of death investigations and ensure justice for families?
Absolutely. First and foremost, I want to make certain that I'm knowledgeable of the practice, of the best practice in all of those investigations. Meaning, from a law enforcement standpoint, what are the expectations when the coroner comes on scene? What will I do once I get there? What their expectations are, and having built relationships with those individuals, not just on scene side, not just when the coroner's office is called, but relations that are built outside of those occasions. Meaning that we have a communication with each other and we're comfortable having conversations with each other because we have built a relationship with law enforcement. One. Two, in regard to our medical professions, I certainly have intentions of going around to our local hospitals where I would go and introducing myself to those. Typically, usually, you'll go into the ER, right? And that's when you'll have families there, making certain that I introduce myself to the staff, introducing myself to the physicians, also making sure that I go up to the hospice floors, introducing myself to that staff and making sure they know the name with the face, that they know how to contact me, and that I've built a rapport with them as well. And I want to make sure that the community also has a relationship with me by holding town hall meetings, by holding educational meetings, holding mental awareness, holding all of these things that help and inform our families about the occasions of death and those things that matter with that. I want to make sure I build relationships with our funeral homes, making sure that we also are very comfortable with conversations with each other, because any delay in conversation and any delay of understanding of best practices, it delays ultimately our families. And I do not want that. I want our families to get results in a timely fashion, and I want them to be satisfied, cared for, so they can move on with that form of bereavement with their family members and kind of get things rolling so they at that point can have closure. And that comes with a communication, that comes with a relationship, and that comes with being knowledgeable of what your role is as coroner and what that role is with everyone else around you. So having a role play and understanding what everybody does, that's very important.
Thank you.
Okay. Alrighty. In cases involving potential criminal activity, what protocols will you follow to coordinate with law enforcement, and support the legal process?
Absolutely. Great question. Very much so. Making sure that, again, when that communication happens, that you are aware who's in charge on the scene, and that when you approach the scene, you get somewhat of an information when you do something like a mini interview, what's happening on the scene, what's the occasion, what is the expectation? Do we feel that this may possibly be criminal? Clearly, if it's a gunshot wound or something to that effect, that, in my opinion, is a criminal case, right? Until you can rule out the fact that if it is or is not suicide. Right off the bat, my first expectation is that it's criminal because it's a weapon used to end the life of this individual. So I would first make that conversation with law enforcement, make sure that we're both clear and on the same page. And if it is criminal, making certain that myself and even with my staff do not contaminate any evidence, making sure that all evidence is collected appropriately, and that it's not contaminated, that anything happens to it, that it's sealed, that it's located, that everyone knows where it's at, and making sure that I know that protocol. And if that means that I do on continuing education of crime scene and forensic investigation, then that's exactly what that means. Making sure I'm knowledgeable and that everybody knows what role they play.
Thank you, ma'am.
Okay, next question. The role of a coroner often involves interacting with grieving families. How do you plan to approach these interactions with empathy and professionalism?
Absolutely. I'll give you another fact about myself. I am an ordained minister. So I have been ordained. I've been ordained for several years. I was a minister for several years prior to that. And so I come from the training of bereavement, the training of counseling, the training of comfort of families, the training of prayer, the training of scripture, and the training of approach of just holding and listening and understanding the bereavement process and grief. So I have that training, and I plan to approach that with that training, with that empathy, with that integrity, with that being able to console the families, being able to understand that sometimes silence is the most powerful sound in the room. But making certain that I am able to provide them with grief information, knowing in the community where they can find those counseling sessions, making certain that they do not have a pastor, and whatever their belief is, that I have formed relationships with these community and religious facilities, that I can connect them quickly to someone who can help them, and to help their families and to set them up in an opportunity to have conversations. Also making sure that you connect them with funeral homes that can understand their sensitivity. Again, when we're talking about cultural things, there's things about certain cultures that require you to know and understand in regard to removing the body, removing their clothing. And certain cultures, you don't do those things, and that helps the family. So being aware of those things and being able to have empathy and understanding and sympathy with that, and knowing best practices in regard to religion and cultural is very, very important. And that's how I decide to handle that. is being walking in my gift of knowing exactly how to pray for you, talk with you, love on you, hug you, stay my distance from you, give you information that you need, knowing that every person is an individual and knowing that every approach doesn't fit everybody.
Great answer. Melissa, one of the well, first of all, I told you we was going to come back to the whole talk about empathy and dealing with grieving families, but and I'm hoping that you bringing a lot to the table. Like even when Kevin talked about when we talked about the young man that just sticks out to me when it comes down to coroner in Colorado. Not only did he get the ketamine, but he was also, Kevin brought up another point, is that he was on the spectrum. He was on the autism spectrum, right? And you being in education, I would hope that you would recognize something like that very, very quickly. Because as you know, again, this is the Black Man's Roundtable, right? So as you know, a lot of times with mental illness, with our young black men, and sometimes cops and other first responders don't quite see the mental illness. I remember a young Air Force guy right here in Metro Atlanta. I think it was in the city of Atlanta.
Exactly.
Naked, didn't have on one stitch of clothing.
Butt naked.
Butt naked, one stitch of clothing. And so obviously there was no harm that he could do to anybody. There was obviously mental illness. This was an Air Force veteran. So, you got the son, going into the military. You got the education, background behind you. And and this is why we asked you for your, now you see why I asked you for your short bio, right? So we can tie these things into what you're trying to run for. So, but whatever you do, all I can tell you, if you win this election, don't get hardened. Don't get hardened, because it is one of those jobs where, you come in the right way, and then things may harden you over time. But I'm hoping with all the different things you have in your background that you can stay steadfast with that and continue to have the empathy and bring along your ministerial stuff, and also the education background in public education, and really be there for the marginalized community, because again, that's what a lot of the Black Men Roundtable viewers want to know about. All right, Kevin, you got it, buddy.
All righty. Okay. Okay. Where am I? Okay. What strategies do you have in mind to enhance your public awareness? Is this room? Yeah, okay. Public awareness and understanding the coroner's role and importance in death investigation within the. Hold on, make sure I'm good. I'm sorry. Okay, let's say it again. What strategies do you have in mind to enhance public awareness and understanding of the coroner's role and importance of death investigations within the community?
Yeah, you talked
Absolutely.
about talking to the community a little bit already, Melissa, but just go into it a little bit further on this question. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. Of course, bringing up those educational awareness opportunities, so town halls. My idea of that is to have the platform for our community to ask the coroner questions, because I know some of the concerns from our community is that there is not that availability and that access. So that's one of my intentions of having those. But my second intention is to bring educational awareness to certain issues that may very well be cultural specific or racial specific, or skin color specific, right? Some of the things that we have to make sure that we are aware of, bringing in information about how important it is about sickle cell awareness, things like that. I want to make sure that our community is being touched in things that are specific to them, but also as a whole, right? Another thing that I'm very passionate about is tissue donation and organ transplant donation. I want to make certain that Douglas County is on the top tier of that. I want other counties to look around us and say, hey, what is she doing right that they're able to touch so many lives? Because I feel like there are some lost opportunities in the last 2023 year for us to participate in that. So I want to kind of pair up with LifeLink and make certain that we're giving families those educational things to know how powerful it is to know the importance of organ donation and tissue donation. It's two separate things. Organ donation is whole organs, which normally happens at bedside in hospitals. But there's times when you're on scene side when those individuals could possibly be tissue donors, meaning their skin, their eyes, valves, veins, things of that nature that can impact the lives of everyone. And I want Douglas County to be on the top of that. I want us to be kind of like the leaders in that. And I'm very passionate about it because it's organ transplant day has touched my immediate family. And so I have an individual in my immediate family who's had 2 liver transplants. And it was a decision of a family who decided to be organ donors at a scene side accident. So I'm very passionate about that. And I want to bring education about that, about tissue donating, about sickle cell anemia, mental awareness. Also, I want to make certain that, we bring education to new moms about having child, you hear about a lot of the child deaths that happen, crib deaths. I want to bring education and awareness to everyone about all topics so we can kind of close the gap, right? Now, I don't want to be out of a job, but I want to close the gap and educate our families. That's what it's about. This is a service. The coroner's office is a service. And I want to serve our families, not just when in a time of death, but in the moment of life. I want to educate and prepare these families when they do have to call the coroner's office. I want them to be prepared.
Right. I know organ donation is very important. I'm an organ donor, but a lot of paranoia comes from organ harvesting.
Yes.
People are worried. Why are you taking his eyes? I didn't tell you to do that. You know what I'm saying? So I can understand that has to be a very difficult conversation with somebody's loved one laying on the ground, and you're asking, hey, can I get his eyes real quick?
Mm-hmm. So I think that's where the power of having those community awareness opportunities, those town halls, is that to give that information to the families where they can go ahead and pre-read and pre-educate themselves about what that looks like and what the real facts are about that, and to open up that window of opportunity to have the platform or conversation, because it is a conversation that a lot of families don't have. And you are correct. There are a lot of information or expectations, or I think I know, right? When the reality of it is that there is better practice. There is a lot of information, and it is valuable to make sure that you're educated on those things. And so I think that in order to stop that regard, that kind of reserve about being a organ donor or a tissue donor, is to educate families and for them to know the process, for them to know what's really actually happening, to really be educated on every piece of it so they can make an informed decision. Similar to what we're doing here, we're asking our Douglas County voters to vote, to put someone in position, right, to help them in this service. But they have to be informed voters. They have to know who the best person is for the job. But I think that if you're asking someone to make a decision about their loved one who has deceased in a moment of bereavement, if you are someone who's pre-educated and pre-informed, they're going to make a very educated decision and an informed decision. And I think information is power, knowledge and wisdom is power, and that helps you make a sound decision.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
And here's where we go back to trust and education. So, I'm glad you talked a lot about understanding the needs of, different cultures. So the African American community, have a justified mistrust of anything medical. And as you know, with the coroner's office, yes, it's both medical and then it's law, is law. But at the same time, I hope that you can understand, and based on the way you've talked today, you I believe you will understand that if, like Kevin talking about, why you're taking his eyes or whatever, if there's a group of people standing very close around you with their deceased family member, you as the county coroner, what you're basically telling us today is that you understand why. You understand why they're not, 300 feet back, because there's a mistrust there. And I think that if you educate the community, right? If you get out and you educate the community and they build a trust with you, okay, then they know that some of the things that Kevin talked about, taking organs that they don't supposed to, maybe that won't be, that much of concern. But one of the things that we're going to do to continue to help educate the community is that if you get in that seat as the county coroner, is we are going to welcome you back here, okay, to this platform. And I think you can tell that we are very relaxed, but we are serious, no pun intended, as a heart attack when it comes down to what we do here as far as holding people accountable, elected officials. And also, I'm glad you brought up, there's a lot of not just educating the community, but I think the county coroner needs to also think about educating, the medical community and the law enforcement community, right? Because I can't tell you how many doctors, and I know coroners are typically not doctors, that don't understand cultural differences, don't understand, so when you say, well, your lip's going to turn purple, well, my lip's not going to turn purple, or when your skin is going to do a certain thing, well, my skin is not going to do that. So I'm glad that you brought that up, that you do understand that there is a difference with things like skin color. And I think the last thing I want, I already said it about educating law enforcement about some of the misconceptions about marginalized communities and other communities. So good deal, Kevin. And
let me ask this
go
real
ahead,
quick, Rodney.
because Melissa may want to say something. I say it so much stuff, so she may want to say something.
Well, Miss Melissa, as you know, because you are married to an African-American male, we don't consider our relatives dead until a year after the funeral. After the funeral. You know what I'm saying? We want to follow you to the hospital, everywhere you go. So sitting there taking organs, I can see that being a problem for you. And I commend you on your patience.
Absolutely. And I think that, again, it is the approach and the communication that you have with the family. Anytime in my decision when I'm dealing with your loved one is that I also want to reference you, right? I also want to make certain that I can comfort you. And if I comfort you and I ask for your input and I ask for your opinion and I ask how things are going, then that lets you know that I'm not just concerned about doing my job. I'm concerned about the well-roundedness of the whole encounter and the whole process. That builds confidence. So in our next unfortunate time that we would come in and encounter, you have confidence and trust in me. And so there's not so much of that reserve. And then that confidence, once you have it and you receive it within yourself, you talk about it. And so that talk goes on to your neighbor, and that talk is spread and it's contagious. And that builds confidence and awareness and integrity within the community. And so the next time when I come into contact with families, they're like, oh, well, my family or my cousin or my aunt had an encounter with you, and I trust you because they trust you. And I think building trust is the key. Building trust is the key, making certain that everybody knows that you have their family, their situation, everything that can be considered and involved in the best interest. And so it's not, the coroner isn't just about coming and picking up a body that is no longer living, right? It's a full service. And that service, again, is to the deceased, of course, with integrity, respect, and professionalism. But it's also to that family that's going to have to come in and get that death certificate and make decisions and talk with the funeral home and have the funeral home come and get their loved ones in the event that there is no autopsy requested. And then even after the autopsy, that transition of my loved one from the morgue to GBI autopsy, from GBI autopsy back to the morgue, and then to that funeral director, every one of those transportations is going to be treated with the same integrity, the same respect, and the same form of confidentiality. And I vow to that. I will certainly make sure that I form confidentiality, that I don't share information about your loved one that you don't want shared. And you and I will have a confidential information conversation and say, what was the expectation? What was your loved one's wishes? So I can make sure I'm honoring those. Are there any religious beliefs that I need to know about before I disturb this body that's here? I mean, that's very important, because to some culture and some religions, once you physically touch that body, you have disturbed the resting spot. And I think it's important for us to know that, and understanding that families are very involved. They're engaged. They want to be knowledgeable. They want to be a part of the process. It's their loved one, right? It's their husband. It's their wife. It's their daughter. And we have to look at it from that aspect, not that I'm here to do a job from a deceased individual. I'm here to take someone's loved one from the last time they're actually going to be able to see them and experience that touch, that vision. I'm there to make that transport. I'm there to make that impression. And you do that with love, integrity, and respect.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, Rodney.
Okay. Okay. How do you plan to address any existing challenges or areas of improvement within the Douglas County Coroner's office if you are elected?
Yes. So there are a couple of things that that there are some concerns. Okay, some concerns and some clear room for improvement. And so some of those concerns are accessibility. I certainly want to make sure that there is someone in the coroner's office during normal business hours, in a way to not just always have to leave a message, but maybe the phone call rolls to my phone or to someone else's phone, and have somebody in place to make sure that our families can get the answers that they need. Not just our families, but our funeral homes, the GBI, the law enforcement, any person that needs to speak to our, maybe it's someone from another county needing to make a transport come to get a family member from our morgue and take it to their morgue. I want to make certain that that communication is available, because time is of the essence when families are trying to get closure. And I think that's important. So that's one. I'm going to make sure that I'm accessible. The second thing that I would make sure that I handle and a kind of approach is their budget. I know there's a lot of conversation about our budget, and it's very important to know that this is talking about taxpayers' money. It's important, and we need to make sure that we take that very seriously. And of course, we're saying we need to move the county forward and we need to progress and all of those things. And I agree. I do think that we need to progress and we need to move the county forward. But there's some things that just are not best practices for our county right now. And I believe that there are some fees that we are associating with our families in one way or the other that doesn't really fit our taxpayers right now. And I think that that can be resolved. I think that should be addressed. And I think that you need to sit down and look at best practices all the way around. How many individuals do we have working for the coroner's office? Does that make sense, right? Looking at all of those things, from personnel to the budget, to being accountable, to being accessible, to making certain that we're using our county vehicles appropriately, having accountability for all of that. And I myself hold myself accountable as the leadership of that office to make sure that all of those things are done with integrity. All of those things are done with respect and honesty. And that every person that's employed in that office understands that that is the expectation, that you do all of those things in honesty and not out of frivolousness, not out of injustice. It has to make sense. Everything we do has to make sense. As a taxpayer, for me personally, I need it to make sense, right? But as the county coroner, it has to. It has to make sense. If it doesn't make sense, then we need to go back to the board and figure out why it doesn't, and then make a solution for the problems.
Okay, so on budget, I know that there's a lot of with the two people who are not incumbents who are running for, for the coroner's office. There's a lot of talk about, the budget and how it maybe need to be, decreased or how it's not necessarily decreased, but how it's not maybe being used efficiently. So with that, one of the things I want you to help me understand is that, so if the budget is a huge issue, and help me understand where, if you want to bring the kind of service, the kind of quality that you're talking about bringing to the coroner's office, help it make sense. Help me make it make sense to feel that, okay, so where can we cut but still have quality? Like you said, the amount of people, right? We know that in dealing with like restaurants and other service industries, that those industries, those jobs have decreased in how much they pay people, and of course the service has decreased. I don't understand why people go out to restaurants and expect all this good service when these people are barely getting paid. And so if we want that quality and that everything that you've talked about that you want to bring to the coroner's office, how can we do that and really just take an axe to the budget? I'm not saying you want to take an axe to the budget, but help us understand that, because that's a big question for the people, the listeners and the viewers of the Black Man's Roundtable.
Absolutely. So as I'm doing your research and investigating, so I'm talking about the calendar year of 2023. So from January 2023 to December 2023. Okay. And so not talking about the year of 2024, it's in the middle of the year. I'm talking specifically for the year of 2023. Okay. So in these budgets and in these totals, I did some research. I pulled payroll. I pulled the numbers of the deaths in our county. And I kind of added those up, and I looked at all the things that we are being invoiced for that kind of comes into making our budget. So there are several types of invoicing and fees that you have. So for a investigation fee, that's $175, okay, for each time you go on call. So any deputy coroner, any deputy sheriff, any coroner that makes a call, that's $175. If they transport that body from, say, bedside, right, at the hospital to the morgue, you add on another $100. So you're at $275 for this one individual. Then let's say that individual is of a larger size and that you individually cannot assist, kind of transport that patient on your own. Then you have someone come from the coroner's office. Then that is an additional fee, which is a $75 assisting fee. Okay. So then let's say that this is a matter of needs an autopsy, right? And the autopsy. So when they take that body from our county morgue and they take it to the GBI location where they do their autopsies, that's a $165 fee. Okay. So let's say also that our family, our loved one has been from, let's say, Wellstar Douglas Hospital, taking to the morgue. They're at the morgue. There's no request for an autopsy. There's no foul play consideration or things like that. There's no criminal activity. It's a natural death, right? It's it's not a death that we would need to do an investigation on. There is a fee given to the funeral home of $75 to release that body. That fee is then the funeral home takes that fee. But do you think that the funeral homes are eating that $75, or do you think that that's passed on in the fee that they charge for the funeral service to the families? So there's a lot of fees happening here, right? And I sat down and I dwelled on it and I thought about it. And as I looked at it, there were 13 individuals on payroll. Of those 13 individuals, 11 of them were doing investigating fees, meaning they were coming on scene and assisting those. And then they were transporting. What would it look like? And of those individuals that I'm talking about, those 11 individuals, those instances that I'm talking about with the fees, none of those were the coroner, the current coroner themselves. It was employed individuals. What would it look like if me as the coroner, I was on those investigating sites? And so out of my job description, in my salary pay, right, in what the voters are paying me for, I do my job and I'm at the scene and I'm the investigator. I'm the one that shows up. Do I still need to charge that $165 fee? I don't think so, because you're already paying me a salary to do my job, right? So that excludes that $165. Let's say this. Do I think other counties in the surrounding area, one of the larger counties around us is Cobb County. Cobb County does not charge $75 to release the body to the funeral homes. Why are we charging that? Where is that money going? I looked at it and releasing fees for families. It was $9,300 that the funeral homes or the families paid to have releasing of the body. $9,300. Now that's not taxpayer money, okay? Let's not confuse that. But I'm still saying that in some point, our families are paying for that, right? They're either paying for it in the funeral cost service, or as taxpayers, we're paying those individuals to come on scene and do the investigation. Do I feel like me alone, one person, can do the job? Absolutely not. That would be a ridiculous thought, right? You do need to have employees in the office, but do you need to have 13? No, you do not. Especially if the coroner is being the coroner. And I mean that respectfully, right? Not in an attacking manner, but just answering the question that you're asking me. What would my resolution be? My resolution would be that I'm on site doing the investigations of the high majority of these calls when it's practical and I'm available. Now, if I'm already addressing a call, clearly I can't be on that call. I can't do that investigating. So I would have one of my employees come in and then would have charged a $165 fee, sure, because that's what they're there for. But if you're paying me $65,000 a year, I don't think that it would make sense if I'm on all the investigating calls that I could physically be at for me to charge our taxpayers $165 if I'm being the coroner.
Okay, Melissa. So I know that the coroner, like we talked about in the beginning, right? The coroner position is one of the most, misunderstood, positions in the county, right? But they are all political positions for a reason. So a lot of the stuff you said made a lot of sense. But I want to make sure that you know and that you understand that you're willing to put your big girl pants on when you may find out. I don't know. I'm just talking, but I just know it's a political position, and political positions always have cronies and other people that want to, take a little bit of the taxpayers' money, right? And so that being said, Kevin and I, we're going to really look at that. We're going to really pay attention to, so dealing with these funeral homes, like you're saying, this release of the body fee, right? $75. Like you're saying, there is no sense in it. But when the funeral homes say, well, we don't want to fool with you anymore or whatever, we expect for you as a county coroner, from what you're saying on the Black Man's Roundtable, to, hey, get up and go do right by the people, out these people, do whatever it is that you need to do, because we're definitely going to be looking for that. So let me close out that one, unless Kevin got something.
Yeah. How many people do you think you need to man an office in one day? I mean, because you're not like an outpatient. You guys are sitting around waiting on somebody to die. So how many people do you really need in an office in one day?
That's a great question. So in my research of the whole full year, I looked at all of the investigating calls that were documented in an invoice for, right? And there were, and in accounts, six to 10 calls where we had in a day where there were 4 deaths or more. There was approximately maybe 11 in a whole year, in a 365-day calendar year. There were probably about between 11 and 15 of those days that there were 3 or more deaths, right? But the remainder of that 365 days a year, there were 2 or none, right? 2 or none deaths. So I think that in the probability is that, of course, all of the individuals that are on staff, not all 13 of them are sitting up at the office and every day for 2023, right? Not all 13 are sitting up there. They took rotation, they took call, they were on schedule, things like that, right? But the reality of it is that when you have a team and you build a team and you have the reliable team and everybody knows and understands their role, I believe that there's the coroner, right? You have your chief deputy, you have an assistant deputy, and then you should have somewhat of an administration role, right? To assess those things in the office, to be able to help the people that are calling, to be able to help families when they come up there needing to get the death certificates, things like that. So I'm looking at, in my mind now, and please remember, I'm not currently in the coroner's office, right? So, but in my mind, in the knowledge that I have, and in the best practices of a business ran professional, I see that you would have at the minimum 4 people, right? Or maximum 4 people for those individuals, because what I feel like when I take on this role, if elected as coroner, you will have 100% of me. That means that every call that gets called for the service of coroner to come to the roadside, to bedside, to wherever side, that I am the one that they talk to. I'm the one that they communicate with. I'm the one that they get their first touch with. And I'm the one that's going to be able to decide who goes and does what. And of those decisions, my expectation is that falls on me, because I'm the coroner. That's what I signed up for. That's what I'm asking for you, Rodney, you, Kevin, to vote for. I'm asking you to check my name on that ballot, that means that your expectation is that when I get that call, that if it's in my capability, meaning I am not with another family, then I'm expected to be on scene. And it's just the best practice. And that's my expectation. That's how I plan to run the coroner's office. I cannot be everywhere all at once, but I certainly can make sure that I have priorities in what my job is and what my role is, and to make sure that I am present and accountable.
Okay, Melissa. One quick thing before we move on from that question, and that is, I'm not asking you to do this right now because you're not in, like you said, you're not the county coroner right now, but. Right. But as you know, Kevin and I both come from a military background, right? Both retired, Army, Navy. That being said, I just want to make sure, and like I said, you'll be back on the roundtable if you're in that office, and maybe if you're not in that office, we'll see. We don't know, right? But contingency plans for mass casualty situations, Okay, whether they are natural or man-made, you know, God forbid a mass shooting or something like that, that you, I can guarantee it from these two uh, career military guys, you will be asked those questions. You know, what is the contingency plan? How do we go about doing that? Again, I'm going to ask you to ask that right now. Answer that right now, because that would be I think it would be unfair until you are actually in the seat and get to see, you know, all of the political crap that goes along with these, you know, with some of these positions and the pushback and all that kind of stuff. But I just want you to know, just know that just have that in your thought process, that if you are the county coroner and you are back on the round table, it'll probably be one of the first questions being asked is, Melissa, hey, what's your contingency plan for, you know, mass casualty, you know, natural, man-made, or whatever. So
Hey,
yeah.
I'm ready, and I already have some ideas on that process. I already have some expectations, and some of those expectations and plans that I already have in place comes from my knowledge working in the hospitals, because you also have to be prepared for those as well, and you also have to make sure that you understand what the plan is. You have command stations, you have command centers. Every
Right.
person plays a role. You have to know who the contact people are. You have to know what those roles that they're doing, what your expectations are, what's your responsibility, who do I call, where do I be,
and
all
and
of those
and
things have to
Melissa
be
and
approved.
Melissa and Melissa, I definitely appreciate the you know, the background. Like I said, you have various backgrounds in a lot of things, and those are great for this office. But also, the reason I'm saying I want to just kind of wait until you're in that office, because one thing in a hospital, the hospital don't have to deal with what? The politics of it all. You see what I'm saying? And so that's why I want to kind of wait, and then that way you get to really see, you know, what is, you know, it's not as it's not as, again, it's not as sanitized as the
Oh,
hospital.
I
You know what I'm
understand.
saying?
Yes.
So yeah, so that's why I want to wait, and we do know you got the background for a lot of this stuff, but it's dealing with the politics that's a little bit, you know, a little bit different. So, Kevin, you got the last one, sir.
Yeah, and Melissa already answered it, but I'm gonna ask it anyway.
Okay.
Okay? She answered like
Hey,
4 questions ago. Okay. Can you provide examples of your leadership experience and your ability to manage teams effectively, particularly in high pressure environments such as death investigations?
Absolutely. So in my past career, right, and the experiences that I have, you deal with things, and they call the medical staff office. And in the medical staff office, I was in charge in leadership of doing what they call a niche initial qualifying or initial credentialing. What that means is that when an individual physician wants to come in and have privileges and do surgeries and touch patients and all of those things in a hospital, they have to go through a vetting process. They have to go through an application process. And in that, that is me. I'm from touch one to the end. I take all that information, I make a profile, I present them to multiple committees, multiple levels of administration. I create those meetings, I make meeting minutes, and I'm also able to present that individual. Once that presenting has been done, approval's been given, I go back one-on-one with that individual, making sure that they're ready for their role, giving them the tools that they need to be successful, giving them everything they need to make sure that they like where they're supposed to be, what departments they're in. So with that being said, and with that training being done, I'm going to bring those tools that I got in a form of leadership, because my leadership in the medical staff was a very high profile leadership role. It required an individual approach. It required me to be able to think quick on my feet, and it made me have to stay at a level and of an education and keep myself what they call continuing education, in which I plan to do always being abreast to what's going on in other counties, coroners' offices, having conversations with other county coroners, going to any educational platforms that I can go for coroner's office, making sure that I, as a coroner, know my role and any new practices or best practices or any type of state associations that came across with the Coroners Association, making sure that I'm aware of all of those practices and protocols, and then also making sure my staff is aware of those as well. And any educational platforms that I can give the staff, making certain that we understand about being death certificates are created correctly, making sure that we're on the highest level of that, like we're on the highest platform of what's new with those practices. All of that combined, making sure you have full leadership, making sure that you understand that you are the first contact and your first contact is the most impressionable. I make certain that I'm going to be that impression. I'm going to make certain that I make that impression to be memorable and professional.
Thank you. Great. That is great.
All right, Melissa,
Okay.
that is all the questions we have. I just want for you to know I don't know, what other platforms that you may have been on, but I hope the takeaway that you got from the Black Man's Roundtable is that, you know, yes, the coroner's office is one of the most misunderstood, most ignored offices, in of elected office positions. But I hope that you can see that as far as the Black Man's Roundtable, we're going to be on it. And we are going to really pay attention to because you know what? Everybody talk about this life matter, that life matter, or whatever, but the afterlife matters as well,
Absolutely.
and treating, like Kevin alluded to a little bit earlier, a lot of times in the African American community and in other communities of ethnicity. I don't really like to say communities of colors or whatever, but they practice a lot of the same things, and I'm hoping that that all of the things that you're bringing to the table will help with these families in their grieving process from the county coroner. And I think that's it. Kevin, anything you want to say before
Yeah.
we let Miss Polk let the people know how they can reach her and all that?
Okay. Well, Miss Melissa, I want to let you just say that I really admire your courage, first of all. I played football in high school and college. And when I went to biology class and had to dissect that pig, I fainted. So I don't know how you do it, but I admire you for that.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you. I
yeah,
appreciate that. I truly enjoy healthcare in a sense. From the living side, right, and also from the mortuary side. I truly have a passion for it. I'm driven by it. I thrive in it, and I really look to help people, the living, help them stay well, right, and then those that have passed on to help them with closure. So I really see the service in both sides of it. I have a servant's heart, and I look to serve families that are going through illness to help them get better, and I also look to serve families who are dealing with bereavement and grief to help them have closure.
great. Well, I tell you, I want to also extend and to say I appreciate your courage. You know, you and I didn't meet on the best of occasions, but you know what? You had no problem coming on the round table, and you were very excited about it. And I appreciate that you don't take things personal. And that's what it's shown to me, is that you didn't take anything personal from a few months back when we first encountered with each other. But as you can see, we are definitely engaged with your office, and I think that you should want a spotlight on your office. Well, one of the community advocates, or whatever you want to call the Black Man's Roundtable, it will come from this place, that we will really pay attention to the county coroner's office and stop making it be some, just some figment of people's imagination until they lose someone. So we appreciate you. Melissa Polk, let the people know how they can reach you, donate, and all that other good stuff.
Oh, great. Wonderful. Thank you for the opportunity. I wasn't prepared to tell them how to donate, but
Hmm.
you can reach me. I have a campaign email. It's dcelectionpolk@gmail.com. Again, that's dcelectionpolk@gmail.com. I have my committee to elect Melissa Polk account at Truist Bank. So if you are interested in doing that, I also have Zelle. You can reach that, and that's also under DC Election Polk. So DC Election Polk, POLK 2024 at gmail.com. And I'd like to make a correction. My campaign email address is DC Election Polk 2024 at gmail.com. And you can also search that email address if you would like to send anything Zelle. I greatly would appreciate it. But certainly I'm here. I understood the sacrifice to come for this election. I understood that it was not only a emotional and a physical sacrifice. I also understood it was a financial sacrifice, and that it is that important to me to be elected in this position that I took all of those three sacrifices and take it with grace and walk lightly on it and with my head held high. So anyone that would like to donate, please feel free to do so. Or you can shoot me an email and I can give you other ways on how to, if you would like to mail a check. I don't want to give out my address over the
No, don't do that.
So if you are very interested and very committed to supporting me in that manner and a monetary value, again, greatly appreciated. But I assure you that I have taken on the responsibility and the burden of running to be your next Douglas County Coroner.
Do you have any engagements coming up?
Oh, yep. That's good.
So thank you. So I have this engagement, of course, which was very, very important to me, and so I'm so grateful for it. So as it's winding down, early election is happening, so a lot of the engagements have already happened, but I will be at the Taste of Douglasville that's coming up on May 18th. I will be a vendor there, so I'll have a booth, so please stop by and speak with me. If while you saw this and watched this, you had thought of some additional questions you would like to ask me, please feel free to come by and talk to me. I would love to have a conversation with you. So I will be at the Taste of Douglasville. And so that's one of the only real publicized events that I have until the primary election on May 21st. So that's pretty much it. There's no more forums or anything that I'm aware of.
Gotcha.
Well, thank you, madam. It's been a pleasure. And on behalf of my co-host, Mr. Kevin Evans, we appreciate you. We appreciate you coming out. We appreciate you listening today and watching. And until next time, we'll see you out in those streets and those suites. Peace. Don't forget to check us out on Spotify or wherever you get your podcasts. Do you have show ideas or want to be on the show? Shoot us an email at blackmansroundtable@gmail.com. And please follow us on Facebook.